Alright, so I want to make a video updating everyone as usual, getting right into it. There's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is the active cases went up slightly again. The good news is we had 37 cases, so nothing out of the ordinary as of over the last week or so. Hospitalizations are down a decent amount. I don't. It's kind of weird. The hospitalizations they go down and then they go up by like 10 in a day. So I don't know if they're just not tracking them accurately or what exactly is going on there. But nonetheless, we are back down to pretty much an all-time low, at least for the last while. Um, Again, continue to test a ton of people, so expect to take a while for the cases to come back down. Again, a lot of people are I see this constantly on social media about people saying, "Oh, we're having more cases. Why are we reopening?" Well, we're testing more people. And the other thing to point out is that the government has said that the majority of the new case or the new cases being discovered are people who are in their 20s and 30s, i.e., people who are probably asymptomatic, if not very mild symptoms. And those are the group of people that are much less likely to spread than someone who it does have symptoms. So we're getting more cases, but we're getting more cases for people who are less likely to spread it than the average person that has it. So that is actually a good thing. I mean, the less cases, the better, but if you have to have a new case, you prefer it to be someone who's less likely to spread it than the average person. So that is good news. And the main problems, again, same old, same old. The whole thing is a complete and utter fraud, like 110% complete and utter fraud. Um, I don't know how the government can get up there with a straight face and still pretend that this is this massive issue. The clear and obvious solution has, I mean, like I said, there's other areas that have this too. The only way that keeping things closed at this point makes any sense is if the places that have reopened ahead, faster than we did, have had issues, and none of them have. Like literally none of them have, especially the ones close to us. I mean, you look at you look at a country like Japan, didn't close, never had any issues. I think they had quite a few. They had less than 1,000 dead, and their population's what, 3, 4 times as much as Canada. Um, we had Sweden, who is, depending on who you talk to, again, Sweden's infection rate and death rate is a little higher than the average, but they're still nowhere near the Italies and the Spains of the world. They're nowhere near some of the places in the States and even Canada. So um, I would still say Sweden is an example of things working too. You look at states like South Dakota, Florida, Georgia, they're all states that have been, I think South Dakota never fully closed. Florida and Georgia both been open for 6, 7, 8 weeks now. So again, the idea that keeping things closed makes any sense at this point whatsoever is absolutely insane. And again, this is just an example of the classic example of basic human psychology that when people have a belief, the more evidence that piles up contradicting their beliefs, the more likely they are to double down on that belief. And this is just a um, clear evidence of that. And you really can't make this. And people, the pro lockdown people, make the same thing. Oh, you're in that group. No, uh, for the simple reason that I initially tacitly supported the lockdowns because again we didn't have a lot of data, and I will admit that I trusted the government a little bit too much on that one. That is one thing I definitely will say that I was wrong about. I should have been more skeptical about the government. The problem is that we didn't have any data that there was clear evidence that proved the government's theories being wrong. So that is the one thing that was kind of hard to do. Now we have um, mountains of evidence that proves the government's theories to be completely wrong. The death rate is much, much lower than we originally thought. And I seen another thing come out today that people under, I believe, 50, the death rate for them is even continuing to go down. Again, that's my prediction that before we're all said and done, the death rate for people under 50 or 60 is going to be pretty well exactly the same as the flu. The numbers we have right now show that it's slightly higher for people under, I think under 20 for sure, under 30 as well. The numbers are pretty comparable to the flu. And my guess is by the time we're all said and done, we'll find out that the numbers are similar to the flu for pretty well anyone who isn't a senior or who has underlying health conditions. And it will just be another piece of evidence that shows that this is just a complete and utter fraud. the other pieces of evidence, asymptomatic spread is much rarer than we originally thought. Um, yeah, there's so much stuff that, again, I'm just trying to think of stuff off the top of my head that I'm just losing count. So the point being is that the people who are anti-lockdown have clearly been vindicated because all the evidence that would have needed to come out to prove them right has came out. So that is that. Now, the big stuff in the news over the last couple days, or actually yesterday in particular, actually a few days, but there's two or three different stories going on. There's the one in the States that I'll get to soon. There's another one. Um, so this is one that this one's just exclusively in Canada, but this is from Terry I on Twitter. Now he puts it in a good way. He says, CTV is reporting that the First Nations man shot by police lunged towards them with knives. This is not racism. This is police doing what they've trained to do when their own lives are in jeopardy. CTV is driving racism to epic heights. This is not news. This is extreme misinformation. And the other big story is that of the States yesterday. I don't know if it happened 2 nights ago, but it was all over the news yesterday. It's all over the news today. Even CBC's talking about it more than pretty much any other story. In that we don't have all the exact details, but what I've seen, a guy went to Wendy's. He was drunk. He fell asleep in his car. Someone must have called the cops on him or recognized that he was drunk. Cops show up, find him asleep in his car. They get him out of there eventually. They breathalyze him, find that he was over the legal limit. They go to arrest the guy. The guy resists arrest. I think he grabbed one of the cops' tasers. He ran. He tried to shoot the taser at the cops, and the cops shot him. Now, the problem with this being is that if someone, resists arrest, gets violent, steals your weapon, like, come on, people. You do that kind of stuff, you deserve to get shot. Like, and this is the problem. This is why Black Lives Matter is losing I mean, they pretty much already did. I mean, they're given the fact that they're clearly in bed with the Democrats. I mean, a lot of the donations they're giving to the Democrats. So again, the people claim, oh, it's not a political movement. Well, yeah, it is a political movement. And it is by definition. You literally got caught giving money to the Democrats. So again, stop pretending it's not a political movement, and stop pretending you care about Black lives, because you really just selectively care about Black lives. You care about Black lives when you can further your political agenda. You don't care about the hundreds of people that get shot every year in multiple cities in the States that are shot by other Black men. You care about the very small amount of Black men that are shot by police, most of them being justified. Now, again, if you resist arrest, if you steal an officer's weapon, you don't get sympathy. Now, can you argue maybe could they have done something other than, yeah? But again, you don't get to steal people's weapon and resist arrest and pretend you're the innocent one, because you're not. You're not the innocent one. Every lawyer will tell you, if you believe that you were, unfairly arrested, unfairly targeted by the police, let them arrest you, talk to your lawyer, and then, take them to court, sue them, whatever you have to do. Every lawyer will tell you to do that. No lawyer will tell you, yeah, resist arrest and, fight it at all costs, right? No lawyer in the world will tell you to do that, because that just makes you look guilty. If you're innocent, why would you do that? And again, you can easy, if you were unfairly targeted and held in jail, yeah, you can get a pretty good amount of money. You could get those people fired. Now, again, this kind of stuff is so terrible, and what is driving all of this is the mainstream media. The mainstream media, and to a slightly lesser degree, leftist politicians, the Justin Trudeau's, the Democrats in the States. I mean, pretty much anyone to the left in Canada. They are the ones that are making this problem so bad, because they talk about it ad nauseum. And I'm fine with talking about genuine racism, genuine police brutality. I'm fine talking about that. The problem is that they do not discern between clear justifications and clear unjustifications. George Floyd resisted arrest, but was putting the knee on the neck for 10 minutes. Over the top. Yes, obviously that was much, much too much. They should have just put him in the back of the car. George Floyd, yeah, that is a genuine example of police brutality. And there's nothing to protest about either. There's nothing. The cop was charged. The other police officers are being charged as well. Like, what are you protesting? What are you protesting? You want the whole point of protesting is you want justice. He's going to court. He was charged with third-degree murder, or maybe even second, but I don't know if that'll stick. I think third probably will stick, or manslaughter, but I think third and manslaughter are pretty similar. So again, what in the world are they protesting? Like, what in the world are they protesting? And I understand, oh, it's systematic racism. Well, there's no proof systematic racism exists. There's no proof of it. I pointed this out ad nauseum. I've made multiple videos about it, but the general conversation and argument goes like this: oh well, blacks. They'll point out, oh, blacks are 13% of the population and they're 25% of the people in jail. Okay, well, the easy way of debunking that is, blacks commit 50% of violent crimes. So if anything, they're underrepresented. Again, these arguments that they make are so easily debunkable, it's not even funny. What, 95% of people in jail are men? Does that mean that the justice system is sexist against men? Because that's basically the argument they're making. That's the argument they're making. But everybody knows that men commit a lot more crime, and that's why they're in jail, which is the same exact thing for blacks. They're in jail more because they commit more crime. The numbers clearly back it up. Police do not disproportionately target blacks. They actually under-target them as a percent of the population. So again, until we can talk about the basic facts as a society, nothing is going to change. The problem is just going to keep getting worse because we have most of the Black Lives Matter people refuse to acknowledge what the actual problem is. They want to pretend that something that is largely made up is the problem. And by default, the problem will continue to get worse until we can acknowledge it. And this is from Donald Trump Jr. This is something that's very sad, and he says they're canceling the pastor of the largest and most racially diverse church in Alabama just because he likes some of Charlie Kirk's posts on Twitter. Absolutely insane. Now again, this is where we're at in society nowadays, and again, I've been warning about it for the entirety of the time I've been making videos, but most of the people watching this probably fully understand. But for the people that aren't, and for the people that are watching that know people that don't understand, things are going to get a heck of a lot worse before they get better. And here's the reason why things are going to get a heck of a lot worse before they get better. I mean, for starters, Charlie Kirk is not radical whatsoever. I mean, there's plenty of people on the right who think that Charlie Kirk is way too moderate for their liking. There's plenty. In fact, a lot of people that I could name off the top of my head. I'm not going to name them, but anybody on the right should know who they are. Turning Point USA is not far right or way out there by any stretch of the imagination. But here's what that people say will justify it. Oh, is they're only going after the radical people. But this is the classic example. It's the first they came for this person. I said nothing. Then they came for that person. I said nothing. So on and so forth. Then they came for me and there was no one left. That is what is going to happen. It is entirely predictable throughout history that that has happened. And again, those who don't understand history, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And here we are. They are going to keep coming until nobody is left that isn't a far leftist. They will keep doing that. I guarantee it. Mark. Now, again, there's quite a bit of pushback. It's not like there's no pushback. The problem is that the people who have the ability to sway the majority opinion are largely silent on the issue. And by default, they're siding with the violent cancel culture people, and that's the big problem. So this is from Frank McVitie, and Canada sends 790 million to Bill Gates' organization to push global vaccination. Now again, this is just another example of the liberal and the Trudeau corruption. Again, it's literally off the charts levels of corruption and whatnot, and the idea that we don't need a vaccine. There's no evidence we need a vaccine. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, we need a vaccine and we can't go back to normal life till we have a vaccine. No, there's literal top doctors, some of the highest people in the medical field in Italy saying, yeah, the virus is largely non-existent here. This is one of the hardest hit countries in the world. And we have top doctors saying, yeah, the virus is largely non-existent here right now. So why in the world do we need a vaccine? We're like what, a month or two at the most out from that? Unless we can literally get a vaccine within the next month, which we're talking probably 99% chance that's not going to happen, we don't need a vaccine. And there's going to be no big massive second wave. Is it possible? Yes, but is there any evidence that points to that? No, none whatsoever. And the only way the second wave would be anything to worry about is if it's infinitely times bigger than the first. We easily dealt with the first wave, like literally easily. We could get hit 10 times harder and still be able to deal with it. And not that I want any of that kind of stuff, but the point is we don't need a vaccine. And the big problem, I mean, the last thing I wanted to point out, I guess not, I don't want to dive too deep into it. We have all these lefties that complain about corporations and corporate greed ad nauseum. That's all they ever talk about, and yet they're perfectly fine with Bill Gates profiting $100 billion, even more. He says it could be upwards of 200 billion. They're perfectly fine with these big corporations and rich folk profiting tens of billions, some of them hundreds of billions of dollars. They're perfectly fine with that in this situation. Like, it just goes to show these people have no values, no ethics whatsoever, like none whatsoever. It's literally, if someone on the right does it, bad. If we do it, good. Like, that's literally what they believe. And again, that just goes to show that the left has lost all credibility. Anybody who still thinks that they have credibility, you're literally done for. Like, you're done for. This is also from Frank McVitie, and he says the NDP's ongoing campaign attacking ordinary Albertans just doesn't stop. Can you help share this story? You can help strengthen our conservative movement and push back against the NDP for their bad ideas and reckless behavior. And again, the NDP affiliate calls faith-based schools and homeschoolers nut bars. Now, again, I'm not a big fan of any, religious or public schools. I'm not a big fan of either one. If I had to pick one, I probably would pick a religious school because they're at least the brainwashing from a religious school is a little more obvious than the public schools. The public schools, you get brainwashed into communism and socialism. The religious schools, at least it's kind of obvious they're pushing religion on you. 99% of people who go to a public school won't admit that they push communism and socialism on you, but most people who go to religious school admit that they push religion on you. So again, if I had to pick one, that's what I would pick. And the problem, again, homeschoolers. The reason why the NDP is so up in arms against this kind of stuff isn't that they care about educating people. If they cared about educating people, they wouldn't need to force a $15 an hour minimum wage on people, because the education they got would be enough for employers to pay you $15 an hour. Again, this is the problem with public schools and the whole minimum wage argument, is that the reason that we have to push a $15 an hour minimum wage is that schools do such a poor job educating people that you're not worth $15 an hour coming out of high school. And if they did even a half decent job, you would be worth $15 an hour. There's no reason not to. None whatsoever. So the reason that they call homeschoolers and faith-based schools nut bars is that they want to brainwash people into their political ideology. And that is the reason. And again, it's absolutely disgusting. Like, it absolutely disgusts me that that's what they do and what they support. But again, there's not that much in the way of changing that kind of stuff. There really isn't. So it's unfortunate, but it's true. And that's the big problem with this whole public school homeschooling thing. The other thing about homeschooling too that people don't realize, again, the only argument people come up with against homeschooling is largely doesn't bear out. I've seen multiple people, some I know personally, or my family knows personally, some a guy I watch on YouTube that talk, he's in the fitness industry, but he also homeschools his kids. um, Everyone I've talked to says, yeah, they have no trouble with the whole socialization things. You can play sports. You still have friends in the neighborhood. Like, the idea of, oh, you're not going to get their social skills. In fact, I had the one guy say my kids have better social skills. And here's the problem with public schools is that um, I think it's pretty safe to say that pretty much everybody who went to a public school had lots of, or some of them, some people even severely bad experiences or social experiences. You had bullies, you had people who made fun of you, picked on you, whatever. Pretty much everybody had that. And if you're homeschooled, guess what? You get to select the people that you exposed your kids to, which means you're not going to have that experience. So that is there is plenty of benefits to homeschooling. The other good thing about homeschooling is that you can get done the work in much shorter amount of time. Like the guy I was watching to said, yeah, we can get the amount of work that the average kid does in the average school day done in like 2 hours. You know, you work for 2 hours a day, you can get done what the average school gets done in what 6, 7 hours, 8 hours. So again, the idea of again the public school system is largely broken, and the fact that people still pretend that it's good and whatnot is absolutely astounding. But that's kind of the point I wanted to get across. And again, shame on the NDP too. Like, if they were at least honest about it, like at least I would give them that. But the problem is that they pretend that they're still like justified and they actually care about the common good. No, what they care about is pushing their political ideology down people's throats. And if they just flat out admitted that and stop pretending, oh, we care about education. And like I say, if you cared about education, you wouldn't need to force a $15 an hour minimum wage down people's throats. You wouldn't have to do that. So again, that's terrible coming out of the NDP. And again, I really can't stand how all their supporters pretend like they're, oh, we just want the common good and we want to educate people. No, you want to shove your political ideology down people's throats. So anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you'd like to make sure to hit that like and subscribe, check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, appreciate any donations at the very least. Just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last couple things, check me out on Twitter. Check me out on BitChute as well. All the links are in the descriptions. You can find them all there.